Good morning and welcome to Fletton Cemetery in Peterborough. Now today we are here to visit the final resting place of a young man who sadly had his life taken from him. And the person who took his life was unusually a female serial killer. Now we don't get too many of those in this country, but he was an unfortunate victim who had to be killed to keep him quiet. And this woman was the epitome of evil. Absolutely terrible. When I've done my research on this case, I've never read about such an evil person. Now I'll put her in the same category as someone like Myra Hindley. It's a nice little chapel here right behind me. But anyway, what I should do is, as per usual, I shall spin you around. It's not a very big cemetery. I mean, this is obviously the old section here. It's not a very big crematorium and cemetery, so I'll film what I can, and then we'll go and visit the final resting place of Kevin Lee. Yeah, Kevin Lee, he was the second victim of this serial killer. I think it was it's either second or third. And she was just killing because she enjoyed it and for no other reason. I think Kevin, in actual fact, was the only one that was actually murdered for a reason, and that was to keep him quiet. But anyway, as I said, I shall spin you around and we shall have a look around this little cemetery and crematorium while I tell you a little bit about the case of Kevin Lee.
What became known as the Peterborough Ditch Murders took place in Cambridgeshire in March 2013. These murders, unusually, were committed by a woman. She was probably the most dangerous woman in Britain at this time. She is one of only 3 women to ever have been sentenced to a whole life prison sentence in Britain. The other 2 are probably better known and are Myra Hindley and Rose West. Joanna Dennehy was born in Harpenden, Hertfordshire on the 29th of August 1982. She was raised near St Albans with her mother Kathleen, her father Kevin and sister Maria. Her upbringing was by all accounts a stable and loving one, and she did well at school throughout her junior years. As she entered her teenage years, however, Joanna began to experiment with drink and drugs and to spend more time with petty criminals. A story we hear all too often in my videos. At the age of 15, she left home and entered into a relationship with the then 20-year-old John Trina, whom she would later have 2 children with. As their babies grew, Trina and others in the family noticed Dennehy's increasing narcissism. She would put her needs above those of anyone else. By this time, she was an alcoholic and drug addict, and was also self-harming. She had also developed a serious hatred for her mother, who she would often rant about. She was also a petty criminal and served time in a juvenile detention facility for burglary. Sick of the violence and abuse, Trina took the children and relocated, leaving Dennehy alone and homeless. In 2012, Joanna Dennehy was arrested and convicted of theft. She underwent psychological testing while in prison. She was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. Underlying psychopathic traits were noted: rage, impulsivity, violence and anger. In 2013, Joanna met 48-year-old Kevin Lee in Peterborough. Lee rented out cheap rooms to people who were vulnerable. The pair entered into a sexual relationship. Joanna acted as Lee's paid enforcer, collecting rent through intimidation and collecting other debts. To help her with this, she recruited one of her friends, 7-foot 3-inch tall Gary Stretch. Convinced that she was in control of her emotions, she stopped taking her medication. A few months later, in March 2013, she met Polish Łukasz Slabowski while he was shopping in the town centre. They bonded quickly through their mutual interest in drink and drugs. They exchanged phone numbers and almost immediately started texting each other. These texts became more sexual until eventually, on a date between March the 19th and 29th, Joanna invited Lukasz around to an address which she knows will be vacant. When Lukasz arrived, she almost immediately pounced on him and stabbed him once through the heart. After the murder, she contacted Gary Stretch, whose real name was Richards by the way, and they placed Lukasz's body in a wheelie bin. It remained there for 2 days before they removed it and drove to the outskirts of Peterborough and left it in a ditch. Joanna loved the feeling she got from murdering Lukasz, which was very unfortunate for a 56-year-old man named John Chapman. He just happened to be renting a room in the same house as Joanna Dennehy. After the pair had a slight altercation, she decided he was going to be next. In the early hours of the 29th of March 2013, she stabbed him 5 times in the heart while he slept. The following morning, she again called Gary Stretch to help with disposing of the body. This time, however, they got assistance from a mutual friend named Leslie Layton. He was also renting a room in the same house as Joanna. At this time, between the 3 of them, they realised that they had another problem: their landlord, Kevin Lee. He was going to realise there had been 2 murders in his properties, and that would bring the police too close for comfort. He had to go. Joanna and Kevin were in a sexual relationship, so it would be easy to get him alone. Later on the same day, the 29th of March 2013, she lured him over and convinced him to wear one of her dresses. She then stabbed him 5 times in the chest, but he fought back, as the coroner would later state that he had several defensive wounds. Now they had to dispose of 2 bodies. They drove to the same ditch where Lukasz's body had been left and dumped the body of John Chapman. Then they drove 10 miles to another ditch. Here they dumped the body of Kevin Lee. This time, however, it wasn't enough just to leave his body there. Joanna decided to pose his body by placing it face down with the dress pulled up, displaying his bare backside in a degrading way. His body was discovered a short time later, and after going through his phone, the police find a lot of text messages from Joanna. She has now become a person of interest. When they discover the property where she was staying, they discover a blood-soaked mattress. Testing later reveals that the blood belonged to John Chapman, whose body had not yet been discovered. Joanna and Stretch were now on the run, so they robbed a petrol station and burgled a couple of houses before going to a friend of Stretch, a man named Mark Lloyd, to sell the stolen items. Mark didn't want to help them as he had become aware of the murders, but scared for his life, he gets into the car. On the 2nd of April 2013, while driving through Hereford, Joanna decides that she wanted to kill again. At 3:42 p.m, she spotted a 63-year-old man named Robin Bariza, who was just out walking his dog. Dennehy stabbed him twice from behind in the shoulder before he managed to fight her off and escape. Back in the car 9 minutes later, she spotted another man named John Rogers, who was also walking his dog. She again leapt from the car and stabbed him a total of 30 times before stealing his dog and leaving the scene. John miraculously survived the attack after heroic work from paramedics. Eventually the car was stopped and surrounded by police, and Joanna Dennehy and the other 2 occupants were arrested. Getting booked in at the police station only seemed to amuse her, as she laughed and joked with the arresting officer while flirting with another. In November 2013, Joanna Dennehy pled guilty to all 3 murders and the 2 attempted murders. On the 28th of February 2014, Mr. Justice Spencer called her a cruel, calculating, selfish and manipulating serial killer before sentencing her to life imprisonment with an additional order that she should never be released. The 2 men who with her decided that Kevin Lee should be murdered were both also sentenced. Gary Stretch Richards, 47, was sentenced to life imprisonment with a recommendation that he serve no fewer than 19 years. Leslie Layton, 36, was sentenced to a total of 14 years. Today I find myself in Fletton Cemetery, Cambridgeshire, to visit the final resting place of her lover and landlord, Kevin Lee.
Well, that's all the information I could get on this case. Now, when she was captured, I don't want to stand on someone's grave. When she was captured and remanded into custody, on one occasion when they did a sweep of her cell, they discovered a notebook. And in that notebook they found something very interesting. It was an escape plan. Now, in the prison she was in, they used fingerprints to open the doors. So all the prison guards have to use their fingers to get from point A to point B. In her diary, she was going to get one of the prison officers, cut off their finger and use it to escape. Now, just another little interesting fact. Now, she was put into the same prison after conviction as Rose West, another evil woman. And she threatened to kill Rose West. Rose West was so scared, she refused point blank to come out of her cell. So there's a couple of interesting facts about her. She was an absolute evil woman, and I've never known anything like it. I mean, I've read about the Moors murders and the Wests and things like that, but they pale in comparison to this woman. Anyway, Kevin's final resting place is just over here. I'm just negotiating through these graves at the moment in the old section. Yeah, Kevin's final resting place is just over here. So I shall spin you around, and as per usual, we'll go and have a look at it together. Well, I did find it earlier on. Now I've got to try and find it again. I walked around this section once this morning and totally missed it. I don't know how, but I absolutely totally missed it. I think I was looking for the wrong type of grave. Now, where did I see it? Ah, there it is. I can see it. Right. It's just over here. Now this, he was killed so he wouldn't say anything when he discovered that his tenants were going missing. That's the reason he was killed in the end. And this is a final resting place of Kevin Lee. There we go. And as you can see, it's got a picture of him on there. In loving memory of Kevin Lee, 6th of the 11th, 1964 to the 29th of the 3rd, 2013, aged 48 years. Much loved husband, dad, brother and son, unjustly taken away from us, now resting in eternal peace, full of life, laughter, a true one-off. I can only assume this is his wife. In loving memory of Christina Lee, 21st of the 1st, 1971, the 14th of the 9th, 2020, aged 49 years. A much loved wife, mother, daughter, sister and grandmother. A beautiful, wonderful, a waterfall of life who made a friend in anyone she met. May that continue in heaven. And finally at the end, your spirit and love will reign over us always. That is the final resting place of Kevin Lee. Well, that was the final resting place of Kevin Lee. I hope you enjoyed this video, even though it was another sad one, and there will be more sad ones to come. But if you did, please give me a thumbs up, and if you like the content, maybe consider subscribing, and if you do subscribe, make sure to hit that notification bell. Anyway, that's me, Darren, from Fletton Cemetery and Crematorium in Peterborough. I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye for now.